more inward than the shoulder. So I'm going to put that in and just say, well, it goes off the edge, but that's where I'll put it. So this is kind of a weirdo one. This comes up more than the halfway point, so I know I at least have to go there, and I can at least say that's the border. So those are my parameters. Now, you don't always have to do a drag line here, but it does help when you're using this to measure the angles, the pencil, because then you can come down and see if you've got it on or off. Also the angles here, because there's another piece here with the hat brim that I'd probably have to add, because otherwise I'd be cutting through it to go down here. So it's okay, that's there, but there's a hat brim that comes out extra. I'll just leave that. I'm gonna go down to the foot, and then all of this is, I'm not doing anything there yet because it's all tied up. Now I can instantly start to carve out this negative space, and when y'all are painting, I'll tell you the same thing, that you can use the paint to get rid of all that. But I'm gonna go ahead and try and get rid of it quickly. I wanna figure out where these two shapes join. And I'm using the middle of the thing as a reference point, only to say that she's a little bit beyond to the left of the middle. So I'm gonna find the middle of this paper and say she's a little bit left to the middle of the paper. So I'm just gonna guesstimate there. Now you can, that's where you can really grid it out. You can go 2 squares over, and I don't do that. So not only is it here, but the V actually comes a little further down, because when this campfire starts to curve in, it's gonna go down, not up. Make sense? So this is why a lot of people are uncomfortable with me teaching this way, which is how I always still do it, because I'm only trying to get you stepping stones. Some people need every single step mapped out, and some people, I just need to know where I'm going, and then I can just fidget the shapes in there. And some people, I drive them crazy doing that, because they're like, I want to get it right as I'm laying it down. And I appreciate you wanting to do that, but I'm saying it's slowing you down and it's tightening you up. So I'm trying to keep it like, I care, but I don't care. So I got these shapes in there. Now I'm gonna put the top part and the lower part of my, I guess my donut. I'll just draw some general shapes because I just want to see how these values are stacking up. I've got an angle here. I can go ahead and measure the side of her body just for the angle, not for any other purpose, and see, and I'm like, you know, she's got more of a slant coming here, but then I can also look at this width here and tell she's going to be way too wide if I leave her that way. So now I can't figure out what needs to happen. Does this need to come in? Does this need to come in, or both? So because I don't know, I'm going to go ahead and try and map out the other shapes. Well, this is one large shape that represents her. This is one shape that represents that. I'm going to go ahead and cut them in between, so now I can focus on her and that. Now I've got a negative shape that I can start drawing here. It doesn't matter what it looks like, because I'm just trying to get that shape that's remaining. And then I can start breaking this thing up. So even though her head would typically be the shape that I'd be looking for, I'm actually going to use the peach that makes the neck and the head be the same thing. And I'm going to try and cut a piece off of the head. And already I'm like, man, that's too wide, that's too short. I don't care. Let all those voices talk. There's going to be the bottom of her chin. Then I'll start to circle around to try and get what would be the peach shape left over. And I'll narrow this down as I need to. And I'm naturally going to drag it in this way. So I'm going to pull that in. And this method feels messier for a lot of people. It feels inaccurate, but to me it's still, and this is where I really want y'all to start doing stuff like this. Instead of drawing that shape, if it's that dark, go ahead and just put it in, and then let yourself really get into the media to take it out. Let's say that I did this, and I know her face is still gonna be too wide, but let's just say I go ahead and do it anyway, and I get all dark and sassy with it, and I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Narrow the hat down a little bit. And let's say that I get this much in, and I say, man, her face is still too narrow. Well, there's nothing that says I can't take stuff like this and blend and use the kneaded eraser and pull back out. Like, this could turn into her cheek. And it's like, when I come and look at the drawings, sometimes they are so tight with the spaces. It'll be like a cheekbone and then something else next to it. And I'm not saying y'all's, I'm just saying in general. It'll be stuff like this. Maybe there's an eye up here that narrows in. And you'll have it soft, but you'll still have this modulation that's supposed to be like a cheek. And it's 3 different values on a cheek. So I'm trying to get you to put the values in a little bit softer here, and then you're only working within these parameters. This would have to change over a little bit now. Just that made a big difference. Changing the angle of her face over. And then I can put these lines in that mimic the brim hat, because now I can go darker there. I can say, okay, her eyes are right underneath it. Then there's the bottom of her nose. Then there's like her mouth. And then I can come down and start contouring and chipping away, but equal development. I don't want to stay up here with all this
Right,
is
well,
so
all that.
jacked up. So I'll bring down my space. I see that her arms are going to be too wide if I continue the way I'm doing, so I'm going to bring both areas in this way in, because it comes in from the... And then quickly I'll just try and get this part of her shaded in, because that'll quickly tell me if these two values need to be tightened more, instead of me sitting there doing her elbow and shading that and then realizing like, oh, she's still too wide.
Yeah.
And then anytime it starts looking too tight, you can soften some of that down, and then you can sculpt back out. But you get this hazy residue that you never even notice. Like, look, I changed her shoulder, and it's like, I don't even know that that's the old shoulder shape. And you can just keep softening and pulling out and darkening more.
So you use the values and shapes and negative shapes to find your angles and proportions.
And taking both of y'all where you're going, whether you're doing a face or a body, what I would say is I would take what she's doing with the 1 minute quick values, and the next step was, when you pull up an image, like let's get another image that I got one here. Let's take this for example. This is even better because it's already in drawing form, right? The light and dark have already been established. I don't have to do it. Now, this is for sure not going to be life-changing or anything, but I'm going to very quickly just say, if you were going through the same process here, well, I can see top, bottom, left, right. And I can see that her head's at a slant, so I'm going to go ahead and put her ears at a slant, because this one's protruding out lower than this one.
Yeah.
Makes sense, because her head's turned like that. Well, very quickly, I might even use the ears as a gauge, because the eyes, where I can go ahead and draw that across, draw that across, draw that across. And I'm not saying that this is good. I'm saying these are the key marks that I'm looking for before I even start. I'll protrude that out and protrude that out. I didn't take any time with that, but you get what I did, right? I just put the lines there and put it. So you take your process, take all the time you need to get this part done. But what I'd like you to see y'all do more of is look at the shapes within the shapes. If I had to break this big unmanageable thing down, I'd say, well, look, I see a value shape there. I see a value shape there. I'm using the line because it's on the top. It was set by the top of the line, just like a grid was. I see that shape. I see that shape. And yeah, all this could just be one massive shape. And I'd like to see y'all with paint and pencil get this down faster, and then take something to buff it out and just smooth that in, just like charcoal.
Like charcoal, yeah, that's what I was
You're
thinking.
just trying to get that in there to start having something. I know it's a big old mess, but that's where you're using the kneaded eraser and the other stuff to pull out. And anytime you get these tight lines, if you can just start smudging them, it'll create this, like, you can't really tell what was the mistake and what was the entry thing. You can always carve back in or make your darks darker. And it's all that residue that creates the real beauty in the drawing, I think, rather than having like this. You see the difference? And it's because the values are there. And if I had a kneaded eraser or something, I could pull out even more. But the whole neck could be treated like this, because I pushed and pulled these two things out. And then I'm not even reading nose or anything. I'm just going to quickly put values where I see them. And we'll just see how quickly we can get it to look somewhat. When do you feel good?
Huh?
You feel good? You got what you need? So I can smudge this. Now it becomes the value comparison. These are almost the same, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to reshape this a little bit, but as I reshape it, I'm going to also make it darker, and I'll continue to smudge it. And I'll go back and forth with kneaded eraser, paper towel, this, and I'll just push and pull. I can push some of this stuff down and make it a little bit darker, smooth that out, smooth some of that nonsense out.
And you can pretty much do this with anything. That's
Yeah, I way enjoy drawing like this more because I'm constantly shaping and cutting stuff off. It's almost like whittling rather than the other way. To me, it just makes me focus and sit still for so long even getting started. And sometimes I just need to get into it.
Right.
And when I calculate and do all that, I'm not even getting into it because it's so ongoingly, I'm just like slowing down, which is why when I'm looking at that color mix and stuff. And I'm not saying, but you could very quickly look at that. I mean, if this were your drawing and you're coming up and asking me, and it's not even about it looking like her, it's like what massive section
The values.
can I push back? Yeah,
The shadow shapes.
So I can push that out very quickly. I can push this down very quickly. It doesn't matter about outcome. I'm just setting it up.
You do the same thing with painting.
Yes,
With
and
blocking
I would
it in.
rather y'all block in like this. Now, I'm being very messy and not paying attention at all, but look at this remaining eye space. Caleb, you gotta get your stuff set up, right?
Yep.
I'm trying to draw the negative shape of that light, not anything else. I know that I didn't spend enough time measuring everything else, that it's not gonna matter because it's not gonna look like her, but I wanna just show you how that changes. This is the darker value, so I'll bear down with this pencil a little bit more, sculpt around like this, and then smudge just to soften everything, pull back out with eraser if again, because I keep pulling this out because it's the brightest spot. I'll curve this in. Now I can pull some of this down. Just take the whole basket and pull out what you need.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Hi, Alan.
Hi.
All right, we're in the middle of something right now. Now you see the remaining white eye you have changed, and I want to go grab a little micro eraser to pull back out. Oh, good. Thanks.
Is this the normal yellow oxide? Because it looks a little bit more
The ochre?
orange to me than normal.
The ones in the basket are all we ever use.
Okay.
And then I'm looking for dark. This is way darker. Pull some of this out. It's lighter on the bottom. Way lighter on the top. Light is mostly kicking here.
Yeah.
So I'll pull that back out.
Going for a stained glass effect.
So it doesn't look like her, but do you see the value range that I'm getting?
Yeah.
Just from pulling that out. But I'm taking and what I'm seeing too often, it's not on yours so much because it's the pad, but I'm just seeing too much of these marks and the eyes and stuff that's telling me that there's too much definite stuff going down. These shapes should be going down before this stuff.
Before like the
Unless they're,
contour.
yeah, unless they're prominent.
The outside.
There are much more prominent shapes in this design than the eyes. If you just look at it in value sections, I mean, this is a massive piece, this is a massive piece, and there's just there's like a juggle of things happening here. And so I'm looking at the connection of the dark value, but also how it gets darker in certain places.
Right.
And so that's the very first stuff I want to put in, not this. I don't care about that. I want this and this and this and this. And then I'm balancing just the distance between that and how these things look relational to one another so I can push them around. Then I'll come in, because I'll treat this like a big swipe, and I'll micro eraser, and I'll pull this back out, and I'll pull a little of this out and a little of this out. But y'all are, and I say y'all collectively, like
Yes.
just the majority of the students in the group are going in and doing this instead every time with the portraits, instead of like, this will be eye socket, and then let me smudge it, and then let me carve out some of it, the white in the eye, or I'm not looking at that.
I think that's why I was drawn to this artist on Instagram. The way
She's got a lot of the
used
shapes.
a lot of shapes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
It's
like you said. This the contour outline.
And you end up with a little bit more detail, but you see how that's coming into shape just as being an eye? But it's so much softer, and it didn't start out being like that in any way. But I'm really going in with these and letting the build-up hit there. Because then it can just be dark and white spatial, and it's so different. I mean, look at, it's understandable to me why these would be so different and hard for different reasons. Because to me, this is thought out for you. The values are already done.
Right.
Here, you're trying to break down the values and also do what I
Which
asked
I
you.
have.
And that's why you like converted it in that app that you showed me.
And you
Yeah.
look at his picture from, hold that top one up. Oh yeah, you got that too. That's better.
Oh yeah, it's pretty dark. Like the values are like super
Yeah.
But you can also
good
adjust.
shadows. Yeah.
And see, theoretically, if y'all were coming to me, depending on where you're at with your phase of your painting, I would tell you, you know, like you're always free to do whatever you want to do, but this is not a great photo. It doesn't have a good light source. You can't
Yeah.
really tell where the light's coming in, but it's a good composition and design. The slant of her and the story it tells, all that's good. But you can also use your edit tools, which is what Nell was asking about. How can I edit the photos to increase or decrease the brightness, the color, whatever? It still doesn't look like I want it to look, but it carries me far enough that I can finish the vision on my own, you know,
Yeah.
but it bridges the gap. But the main thing I could say, whether it's digital or in person, is like, use your dirty shapes, the smudging and all that stuff to help support you.
Okay. Good. Thank you.